Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Take Two. If you're a Dodger fan, you're probably not watching us right now, and you're watching the game, like Jason and I were a few minutes ago, sporting our Dodger
Yes.
paraphernalia. But if you're not a Dodger fan, thank you. And if you didn't know there was a game on, and now I just told you, and you leave, oh well. Anyway, we're glad you guys are here and able to join us either live or watching at your leisure. And we hope this conversation sparks more conversation with you. As you can see, I have Jason here with me tonight. Thanks, Jason, for being here. And let's jump right into just kind of what I talked about Sunday. Sunday, continuing the series on the politics of Jesus. Jesus in chapter 6 of Matthew, he's going through what was considered the three foundations of righteousness according to the Pharisees at the time of Jesus. And that was giving alms or giving to the poor, prayer, and fasting. Those were the three things that they kind of associated with being righteous, right, before God. And then Jesus kind of deals with it, but he deals with it on very, again, undermining where they were and showing the hypocrisy. And so Sunday was kind of about hypocrisy. Gil's watching us and the Dodgers. Just don't tell us the score after right now because we know what it is right now. And so when he started dealing with that, he talks about doing things to be seen. Earlier, he talked about doing good works so that people can see your good works. The difference here is in order to be seen, right? And let me kind of ask you this idea of hypocrisy and doing things in order to be seen. How has that? And I want to, because I know you and I can start blasting a lot of things that we've seen being in church. And I don't want to go there, right? I don't want to just like, oh, let's blast everybody who we know. I've got names for you, right? I want to talk about maybe the struggles that we have, okay? And the things that we have. And have you struggled in that way, growing up in church, serving in church, uh, doing things in order to be seen?
Oh yeah, for sure. I think
Yeah.
we all do. I think there's, especially working at a church, there's things that we would do. People don't see it, and you would want people to know. Be like,
Yeah.
hey, look, I did fill in the blank. I did this. Um, but yeah, it's
Do you think it's more prevalent in that scenario? In other words, because you work at a church, because you're doing something that's quote spiritual, do you think it's more prevalent to try and be uh, hypocritical because you want to elevate that aspect?
boy, it's a good question. Yeah, because sometimes when man, as you work at the church, kind of you kind of want people to see the sacrifice you make.
Mm-hmm.
But now, haven't been done that. It's been 10 years now,
Mm.
and it's like wow. And I seem life is different now,
Yeah.
and but when I did, there was times that I wanted people to know, like hey, look, this is a sacrifice. I don't get paid big bucks. I don't have a house. I don't have but yeah, I could see what you're saying.
And the reason I'm bringing it up is because you had been in that area, and then you had been just working like at Sprouts in different places. It seems to me, at least it's been true for my life. Not just to throw this at you, but in my life as well. The areas where hypocrisy tends to rise up are in these areas, right? In like the areas of giving, the areas of prayer, or the areas of fasting, or the areas of spirituality, right? It seems like there's this thing within us that wants people to know how good we are, right? And so I have found that has happened with me more probably in my, you know, religious church, whatever life you want to call it, than it did the times I worked construction or whatever, right? I still would want people to know I did a good job, but it seemed more prevalent to me then. Does that seem true to you?
Yeah, I mean, even when I worked at Sprouts, I'm not there anymore, thank God. But
How do you really feel,
oh,
Jason?
yeah, but they used to give us, like, the managers, if they saw us doing extra work, we got a $5 star card. And I was just thinking, like, sometimes I would want the manager to know, like, hey, I cleaned this extra stuff today, and
Yeah.
because I knew I'd get a $5 star card, and but once I got the position of I was kind of a manager position there, I would go out of my way just to make sure employees got $5 star cards. But even within ministry, like, we would, when you would see someone, just you take out the trash or whatever. Small things to me are big things.
Yeah.
And there were small things I would do that no one would see, and I'd be tempted to, like, let people know, like, look, I stuck around at the church for an extra 2 hours,
Yeah.
or I came over and locked up the building or whatever on my day off, or things like that. But even in the work world, I think it's the same way. You want people to know the extra stuff you do. I mean,
Yeah. And it's important to, understand that, like, in the area of giving, when Jesus is talking about, if you give to the poor, don't do it in such a way that people see your good works, or don't do it so that they can see your good works. It doesn't mean that giving to the poor is a bad thing, right? It doesn't mean that helping someone out or staying late or doing extra things, there's nothing wrong with those things. It's why are you doing those things? Because God is wanting those things to get done, but he's wanting those things to get done for the sake of what those things are, and not for the fact that, oh, people are going to see how good we are. And I think that's, for me, just thinking about it this week, has been the struggle of trying to see how I can diminish what needs to be done by having the wrong attitude in that area, where, oh yeah, I want to make sure that this happens, and then, well, just make sure it happens. You don't have to wait until someone sees, or you don't have to do it in such a way that we publicize it, and it's one of those things where I just, like, wrestle with, okay, why am I doing this? Should I announce that we're doing this kind of a thing, or am I doing it because I want people to know how good we are? I'm and there's a battle within me, because I'm very proud, I guess, of the people, like, of Genesis. But I don't think it's a bad pride. It's not like, yeah, we're better than you. It's just like, we have some amazing people that have been generous, and we've been able to do amazing things. Is it okay to say that, or am I puffing up our church? You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. That's something that I struggle with, just dealing with something like this, where you do good things, you want people to know that it's a good thing because you want them to see it and acknowledge, wow, look at, there's something good that's happening, because I want people to think of church as a place that does good things, right? Especially people outside the church. But it's the people in the church that tend to get the proud attitude, or at least I do. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, even to be seen. I don't know, this popped in my head when I was in Bible college. I remember there would be more so dudes. The guys would want to, like, show off and how, like, spiritual they were in front of the girls. Just kind of like they'd get their guitar and, like, worship in front of the girls' dorms, or, like, it used to make me sick. I called the guy out one time. He got ticked. That's just how I was. I would just say, dude, you're such a phony, man. That's just how I was then. And or even, like, they would, pick up a piece of trash in front of the girls, or just, try to impress the girls,
Yeah.
I saw that a lot in Bible college, but not to throw those people under the bus. And we were all, I mean, I think back, I mean, I was young. I was 20, 20, 19, 20 years old, and
Mm-hmm.
everybody else was too. So we were all young. So, we were just, I mean, at the time I thought I was old, but I
Mm-hmm.
think back now, like, man, I was just, that's young. I mean, I thought I was like in the prime of my age, but no, I mean, 19, 20, I think I graduated maybe 21. But that's just, I mean, when I meet 20 year olds now, it's like, you guys are babies, and
Yeah, it's easy looking back, and I think that's one of the things too in this area of hypocrisy. It's almost easier for me to look back and see the hypocrisy of my life when I was younger, and maybe have a little bit more ability to discern motives looking back than I am when I'm present. Because I get clouded by so many things, and I think that's the the struggle that we all have, because I think we're all hypocrites, right? Like Erwin says, we're all hypocrites in transition. So then Jesus gives us these ways to, right? So you can still be good, just don't let your left hand know what your right hand's doing, right? You can still do good, just do it in such a way that it's done in the secret place, because your heavenly Father sees that secret place and lives in that secret place. There's something sacred. It's like that holy of holies where God is at, where the good that you do is in the realm of where God is. And if we can do it in that realm, then it becomes a good thing. So we have to just learn how to not do it the wrong way, right? Um, how has the areas, I mean, we can take any of the areas, whether it's giving, prayer, or fasting. How have any of those things developed with you, maybe from hearing these things from Jesus?
mm, maybe giving. I mean, giving is, especially once you get a family, it's like giving is, it's more of a sacrifice than it
Mm,
was before. Like before, when you don't have kids to feed, you're like, before giving wasn't that big of a deal for me.
no.
When uh, you don't have any kids or whatever, you're like, giving wasn't that big of a sacrifice. Maybe it was just less Dodger game, less Kings game, less going out to eat. But when you have kids, it's kind of like, well, this is kind of a sacrifice.
Yeah.
got karate lessons. I got ballet lessons. I got this to food and stuff, clothes, uh, and it's tough to not to let the right hand know or let
Yeah.
people know.
Yeah.
Um, it is it is a struggle, and
Hmm.
uh, just to give sometimes, uh, especially when I mean, sometimes I think, boy, I wish I made more so I could give more. But then I think, if I start making more, am I gonna really give more?
Hmm.
Or if I win the Powerball or whatever, I'm like, oh, I'm gonna give this many $1 million to the church. But if I do, would I really do that?
Yeah.
Sometimes I like, because I always, when the Powerball, I'll be honest, when the Powerball gets big, I'm like, all right, I'll go get one. I'll buy one ticket, random numbers, because I don't win. And I always say, okay, if I win, I'm gonna give like this many millions to my church. And I'm like, would I really do that?
Yeah. I think you're hitting on something that's important, the idea of generosity. Generosity is really a thing that goes to the motives, right? That Jesus is trying to address. Why are we doing things? And there are people who have just a generous spirit, who I know have been generous towards me, my family, who have out of the blue just done things to help us, where we've experienced generosity of people, not expecting anything in return. Some people we don't even know who they are, who have helped us out at times of need. And it's that, when that happens to me, right? When, if there's times, when I lost my job, and things were really struggling, and people donated food to us, left food for us, or we got money and we didn't know who it was from, and those things happen, and it's kind of that left hand not knowing what the right hand's doing, or vice versa, right? It's not exposing, and so like all I can do is receive this, And there's something special about that, that someone did this, didn't want the recognition, just wanted to bless, and it did, right? It affected us in a powerful way. And that generosity is something that I find that people who are generous, it doesn't matter how much money they have, right? They're just generous. And they're generous with their time. They're generous with what they do have. When I've done training, I've gone to houses that aren't very well-to-do. There's maybe two families living in a home, and they invite me to stay for dinner. Those kinds of things. And then I go to a home where there's just so much money, and they don't offer you water, they don't offer you anything, and it's very meticulous. They're asking for a discount on one of the collars that I sell, and I'm like, really? I mean, it's you see, there's just a different attitude, and those things I think translate into life overall.
Yeah. Well, I think even when you become like, for myself, when I've been blessed by being the receiver, like a few years back, we were blessed by like church here. It was Christmas time. My bank account was in the red, and I was like, there's didn't have nothing. And I was like, shoot, to get someone at church. Oh, what did you get the girls for Christmas? And I was like, sometimes you don't want to tell people, but I was like, oh, this is kind of what's going on. And then I remember, I think Mary called me, oh, can you come by the house really quick? And I went by, and there was this canister, just cash galore. And I started crying because it was like, I was just blown away by the generosity. And but then it made me like want to give more.
Yeah.
Not just my time, but also it felt good when I was able to afford to tithe every week, because there was times like I couldn't afford to tithe, and I felt guilty about it, because I remember, again, like when you work at a church and you would see, especially counting the tithes. I remember counting the tithes. You would see who would give. You'd see how much they gave, and it was a really struggle to like. You would see those people, like, or you would like, some people you would never see their name and be like, oh, this person never gives, and look at, they're taking a lot at the potluck, and or they want to receive more. But as you get older, you don't know what their situation, and you don't know, maybe they're just barely able to pay rent, barely able to especially maybe they're in a new job, like myself right now. I'm in a new job. I mean, not, it's, the money's a little different, but I mean, sometimes it's tough to, you're deciding, okay, should I give or should I,
Yeah.
And sometimes, especially being raised in the church, you're kind of like told, if, they're being told, if you're not giving, you're not trusting God.
Yeah.
You're not truly, oh, you only have $5 left in your bank account. You still need to give that, because God will provide for you, and and you're like, oh yeah, it's always that illustration of the lady who just gives the, oh gosh,
Two pennies.
The 2 pennies, yeah. So you're always, oh look, she gave that, and the rich man didn't, the people who came in didn't give nothing, but she gave everything. So,
and it's interesting too, because Jesus is real specific here about giving to those who are in need, right? And so it's not just giving to a church, it's when you give to the needy. And so I think sometimes that even gets lost, right? Where we have, especially in our culture, it's give to the church, right? And then the whole idea was the church was to give to the needy, right? And so much of giving to the church ends up just being for the church. The church, it supplies the building, it supplies the salaries, it supplies the insurance, it supplies all these things, which are necessary. But then, is that all that it's supplying, right? Where is the exit of money and finances towards others, right? And there's that balance there. I know that we try and have that kind of a balance we want to be people who are generous, so we want to do things that are helpful. But are we doing enough? And I don't expect people to just keep a church in business and not help people who are in need, And I know that that's happened a few times where people have contributed towards a need that they saw and maybe didn't give towards the church, and it's like, that's okay. You know what I mean? It's like you're giving towards a need, and that's fine. And it just forces us to have to own, are we being responsible, for the things that we have? And I think that's a good, challenge, conviction. Uh, Try and understand, what are we here for? I know there's value in teaching, discipling, helping people understand, but it really is about the people, and so this idea of giving isn't just, tithing. It's the idea of helping those who are in need, and it shows up in a lot of different ways. There are people who are in need spiritually, there's people who need prayer, there's people who need a lot of things, and so this can all go towards those things as well. But I think the challenge is, as we talked about, hypocrisy is a mask, right? The problem is when we try to pretend we are someone we're not, and that's the tragedy, I think, of the church and of the people who were the religious people at Jesus' times, is they were pretending to be close to God when they weren't, right? And so Jesus would give an example, a story of a person who was a Pharisee, when, thank God I'm not like this sinner, right? And the sinner couldn't even lift their eyes up and said, Lord, forgive me. And Jesus said, they went away justified, right? And so, like, one of them is wearing a mask, pretending to be, the other one's honest, and one receives the justification, right? And so there's almost a value to brokenness and humility, taking off the mask and saying, I don't do what I should, or I didn't do that, or I'm not really giving like I should, or I'm not going to at least pretend that I am. I wish I could, but I can't. Like you were saying, I think there's more to be gained from honesty than from the pretending,
Yeah.
And so, and in your case, you being honest allowed people then to be generous. Where if you would have pretended like, oh yeah, no, we've got it all together, it would have stopped people being able to contribute to the need that you have, And so that's one of those things that are important, because it allows us to actually open up.
Yeah, I mean, because of it, I mean, I have more of a heart for families that, especially at Christmas time, I'm always thinking of, like, is there anyone who is in need at Christmas time? Just not just for stuff like that, because it's tough when you have kids and you can't give them a Christmas, And, it's nice when you finally can, but when you can't, it really hurts. But then when you get blessed, it changes your heart, because then when you're blessed to be able to give, you kind of know how that person feels, and I have more of a heart, because I mean, I've struggled financially most of my life, so it's like I've never been able to live an easy life. I don't know. I don't know people who do. I don't know. But I have more of a heart for people who are in need now, just because I've been there, done that.
And it's so hard, because everything is so relative, right? It's relative in the culture that we're at, because then if you go to other places, like you've gone, to other places in the world where people don't have as much, it's like, oh man, we do have a lot, and so all these things just force us to value things in the right way, to hold loosely to the things that we have that aren't as important, and maybe hold more tightly to the things, the people who are important, to help keep our balance in these things, so that we don't start living for the appearance, living for the recognition, living to have the things, living so that people notice us. Don't fall into that trap, right? Because it's a different realm. That's, you get your reward. That's all it is. And it's one of those things where you don't remember, you know, that years later. Whatever that recognition was, it won't last. It becomes a nostalgia that makes you weak. It's like Uncle Rico, in Napoleon Dynamite. Yeah, I could have made all state if I would have, put me in coach. And it's like, oh, that's sad. This guy's still living back there in his past, and now it's a tragedy. And that's what'll happen if we try and hold on to those things that are moments because of recognition. Then they become nostalgic places that we hold on to that kind of taint who we are. um, I know that in the church arena, in this area where it is prevalent to act this way, um, there are times when we are weak, we are in need, but we pretend not to be, because if we show people what's really happening, we'll be judged for it.
Yeah, I mean that's how I felt.
Yeah.
I felt like if I let people know, then they're gonna look at me as not a good father. I'm not a good husband at the time. Just they would look at me as like, oh, not even like a real Christian. Like he doesn't really trust God. He doesn't have a strong walk with God because God's not taking care of his needs. It's something that I would struggle with. Because I'd be like, okay, I can't afford to feed my kids, or I can't afford to buy them gifts or
Yeah.
whatever, and I would feel as if, okay, if I say anything, it's gonna be I'm gonna sound like I'm looking for charity, looking like begging. I didn't want to be that person. But even like when I would again working at the church and people would come for help, sometimes we would question them like, okay, really,
Yeah.
do they really need the help? Do they really need us to pay a bill or help? Do they really need the money?
Mm-hmm.
Because money is such a sensitive subject. I mean, it's
Yeah.
it's topic. Talking about finances, talking about money, and it's like even when you start a new job. And for me, I'm always nervous. Okay, what am I getting paid? Or when, I mean, even like when I started my new job, I was nervous to ask, hey, what day do I get paid? Or when do I get paid? I was like nervous to ask that. Even like when I got my first check, I was like, oh shoot, this is a lot smaller than I thought. But then I looked at the dates. I was like, oh, that's only 1 week. I was like, I was so nervous. Like, okay, I think I made a mistake in changing jobs. I'm like, maybe I shouldn't have taken this job. But then I looked and saw that for 1 week you get paid every other week, and that paycheck was only for 1 week. I was like, oh, okay, all right,
I'm gonna live.
okay, I won't be too bad.
Now, I know you've shared this publicly before, so that's why I bring it up. You've talked about how just suffering with depression and things, and the the struggle you had coming out with those things, right? At a church, being at a church and saying, I feel depressed, at that time. And this was years ago. Um, and not being able to be honest, and not being able to get the guidance that you needed, where years later you were able to seek and get counseling, and find help, to get you through those things, where before it was almost like, no, you can't reveal that, otherwise you're going to get judged, you're going to get labeled, people are going to have this attitude towards you, and that's hurt you in a lot of ways. I mean, not just at the church, in your life. um, what was the struggle like for you, where you felt like you could not reveal the things that were really happening within you, for fear of, I don't know, what did you fear, I guess?
I think it was also the fear of, it was a bunch of stuff. I mean, not just the fear of people thinking that I wasn't a true believer, I wasn't a true Christian, that I wasn't a real man, that I, was not a good father, not a good husband, not a good you know, fill in the blank, whatever it was. I felt like, okay, I'm not a good person,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and I don't have a true faith in God, you know, I don't have a true trust in Jesus Christ, you know. And it 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 was, you know, it was tough, you know. Even I think again, finances makes depression even worse because you just feel like I'm not taking
Yeah.
care of those needs, you know. I'm not, you
Mm-hmm.
know, I don't have the nice home, you know. I don't have, you know, like I feel like I'm gonna live in a van down by the river, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And but uh, again, being raised in the church, I mean, luckily, I mean, a lot of churches now are a lot more open to mental health.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I've heard so many churches now who actually hire psychologists and Christian psychologists and therapists on their staff to counsel people.
Yeah.
So being raised in the church, if you were told about if you had mental health issues, it meant that you were not saved. It meant
Yeah.
that you were not a true believer. It meant that you didn't have a true faith in God. So I mean, that was another reason why it was like, okay, I can't say anything because
Mm-hmm.
back then, I mean, it's like I said, I think it's awesome that churches are really
Yeah.
changing. I mean, I think maybe the last, I'd say, 3 years, I think I've seen a really big change
Mm-hmm.
in the American church.
Yeah.
You know, not I think if you're, I mean, we've been to the UK and it's different there. I mean, they're
Mm-hmm.
more. I mean, they've been open to that for a long time out there. Their church is so different in the parts of the world where the American church is just, to me, does more harm than good sometimes.
Yeah. Trying to put up a good front and good
Yeah.
appearance. Yeah. I mean, what? And this is up to you. You know how much you want to share. I don't want to put you on a spotlight. Um, if it's uncomfortable for you, just say, yeah. Well, you know, you can just kind of let me know. But when you had these struggles and you felt like you needed to share something but were unable to, what did that do to you in your, I guess, relationship with God? How did it affect you? Was it something that, because here you are, a person of faith still, right? You didn't lose that faith. Did it draw you towards God more? Did it what happened in that scenario with you?
I mean, times I would question God. To be
Mhm.
honest, like God, are you really there? Do you really care? Do you really love me? Are you really, you know, do you
Mhm.
really exist? Sometimes, you know, is this thing real? Because I see other people being tremendously blessed, and sometimes I feel like I'm more, I don't want to say, I guess the word spiritual, you know, than
Mhm.
that person. And look at, they're like so blessed. They have everything. They
Yeah.
have the good job. They have the big family. They got the big house, and I don't have any of that. Or, you know, this person has done. You know, they've had multiple affairs. They've cheated on their taxes. They've stolen, and look, they're doing good to the world's eyes.
Yeah.
And so sometimes I just, you know, again, I would just hide it in. You know,
Mhm.
it was a struggle at times. You know, and took years and years before I would even reveal it, talk to anyone about it
Yeah.
because I was scared because, like the one, two times I did, I just got torn a new one. You know,
Yeah.
it made me feel even worse than if I were to get help. So it was just like, I mean, sometimes I'd be tempted to just do the worldly things. I guess you can call it, use the
Yeah.
Christian term, just like, you know, I might as well just go and party and have a good time because maybe I'd be happier. But yeah, I mean, it was tough holding it in because, like I said, being raised in the church, that was really frowned
Yeah.
upon.
I know. I heard someone speaking one time just recently on a podcast about her struggle having cancer and going through these things where, as Jesus talks about, you know, you receive your reward, and he talks about this heavenly reward, and then we have this earthly reward, that these different realms and the way we measure things is different. You know, a heavenly reward is different in its essence. It's not, I think I said, it's not streets of gold is your heavenly reward. Your heavenly reward is actually the presence of God with you, where the earthly reward is the recognition or the money, those things that you saw. Look, I see these people are getting these things, right? Um, and it's a difficult thing when we live in a place where everything is about what you see, everything is about recognition, where it's very much an honor and shame culture. You're either, an idol, or you're, someone who's despised. And we live kind of in that realm. And yet there's this other realm where God is working in the life of someone who does have cancer and is struggling, even though, like you said, man, I've given my life to serving you. I've given my life to writing about you, to studying, and to doing all these great things. And here I am in this realm, not looking like I have any success. But how do we get to see this other realm, right? Where now God is actually near the brokenhearted, the scripture would say. The God is actually close to, even in the Beatitudes, Jesus would say, the poor in spirit, those who mourn, right? Jesus is saying that characteristic is more where the reward actually is, right? And so maybe we're just not seeing clearly, right? Because we are so polluted by the culture and the things that we see, and it gets twisted. And I mean, that's something that I just, wrestling through and trying to see, okay, how do I live in this different realm where I'm not so affected by all these other things? You know what I'm saying? It's hard.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Even like now, when I'm going through, like, first there was the depression and anxiety I was going through, and I mean, it's not as bad as it was a few years ago. I still have off and on battle, but not near. I mean, the depression's pretty much gone. Still anxiety, but now it's like, because back then, again, in the church, even like now, being divorced, it's like tough to like admit that to church people.
Yeah.
It's like you don't want to let people to know that you're divorced, because if they find out you are, then like, wow, you're not. So I feel like every time, like, my life, I feel like, okay, first was depression, anxiety, and like I'm not a true believer. Now it's like, now I'm divorced. Now it's like, so now it's like people try to.
Now you're disqualified.
Yeah. Now, I mean, I do struggle. So now I do feel like maybe I'm disqualified from ministry now, because that's what I was taught. That's what I was brainwashed with, was that if a person's divorced for non-sexual sin, they're not qualified for ministry anymore.
Yeah.
And it's. I mean, I'm going through a support group right now, and that's we talked about that.
Yeah.
And it's something that it's tough to admit to.
Yeah.
And one of the leaders in the group said it took him a couple of years to finally, like, he met a new family in church, and they said, they said, hey, these are our kids, we're married, and he goes, oh, I'm divorced. And he said the first time he said it was like,
yeah,
wow. He said it actually was like a monkey off his back. He actually felt like comfortable.
Yeah.
He's like, because he could admit to, he said the people looked at him like, whoa. Like, he said it so, like, not proudly, but just in a way, just
matter of fact.
Just matter of fact. Hey, I'm divorced. This is my daughter, and I still struggle with that right now. I mean, shoot, I'm doing it right now on YouTube and on a podcast right now. But it's still a struggle if I bump into people who haven't been at church in a while, or I bump into people from. I've been to a few churches. Bump into from old churches. I usually don't say it. They do ask me, "Oh, how's your wife doing?" Oh, yeah, she's good. She's I'll say she's doing great. She's I'll tell everything she's doing right now. They're, oh, that's good. I'm like, everyone's doing
and
great.
You don't want to get into that conversation.
Yeah.
And just for the record, we don't believe that Jason's disqualified. And I talked about divorce not too long ago, just how there is that misuse of scripture to box things in where Jesus was never intending it to be, and again, the shame that is that the place that is supposed to be a place for healing and openness has become something different, right? Become a place where we hide those things because otherwise we get judged, right? Otherwise we're seen as something we're not. And the silly thing is, we're all doing it, right? We're all something we're not. None of us are completely open and honest. The first time you go on a date, you're the biggest liar in the world, right? I mean, you're never out there saying all of what's true about you. You're always trying to play yourself up into these things. It's just something that we all do. I shared that story of my grandson, and he comes in his little Spider-Man outfit, and he's all of 3 foot tall, and he thinks he's Spider-Man, or he thinks he can fool me. And it's like the cutest thing, but really it's silly, because that's really what we do, right? We come across, yes, I've got it all together, where any of us, if we knew our humanity, we would say, I know you're just like me, right? I know you struggle, and I know you have doubts. I know you're selfish like I'm selfish. I know that we all have these things to varying degrees. Can we at least just admit that we need each other? We need help. We need to be able to be honest. We need to be able to be there for each other. I mean, that's what I love about like groups like the AA that meets here on Friday. It's just a no BS thing. You come here, I am this, and everyone knows it. And they're okay with it. It's like, we didn't expect you to be anything but. That's why you're here. Isn't that why we're here, right? Shouldn't that be why we're here? We're here because we need a savior. We need help. We need guidance. We need someone to help us in our ability to be charitable, our ability to, know how to give in the right way, not the wrong way, in those areas. Or the same thing with the, fasting. We have to be able to see that if I come across this way, then what I'm really trying to do is be something. I love what he says in verse 16 of Matthew 6. He says, when you fast, do not look gloomy like the hypocrites, for they disfigure their faces that their fasting may be seen by others. And literally it means they become unrecognizable in order to be recognized, right? It's like, I'm going to purposefully look different so that you can see me, right? I know you shared with me, that 5 Iron Frenzy song that talks about masks. I don't know if there's part of that you want to.
Oh, yeah. If there's a band, 5 Iron Frenzy. They're a punk ska band. They came out with a new album this year called, I forget what it's called, but it came out in January. And they don't call themselves a Christian band. They were, but their newest album, they really call out the left church. I'll just read the opening lyrics to a song called, my favorite song on the album is called Wall Supplies Last. I think another reason why I liked it was while I was working at Sprouts and I saw how people acted during this time. But the opening of the song says, you're offended at the wrong thing, brother, and you're burning you're burning all your bridges with hate. You fall asleep while Jesus stayed up weeping, while the Pharisees were plotting our fate. Yesterday was peaceful, now your verses are deceitful. I mean, and then there's another part of the song, I'll read it really quick. You're hiding behind your mask while the supplies last. Did you waste your prayers protecting snipers while you hoarded all the Lysol and diapers? Save some profits for your court of vipers because your God only favors survivors. I mean, just... the whole, pretty much whole album are songs like that. What was funny, the album came out the week of the Capitol attack, and there's a song on there about attacking the Capitol, but not that way. And like the lead singer, he's a Reese Roper. He's a funny guy, but people thought like he wrote the song about that, but it just happened to come out the week of that happening. But I mean, you may not like that style of music, but I would recommend just looking up the album, reading the lyrics, because every song is just very. I mean, of all their albums, it's my favorite one because it really wakes you up, and I really appreciate them just calling out the church, because someone wrote, they had an album with like a robot on a few years, like maybe 10, 15 years ago, that with a robot, but somebody had made a new version of the robot picking up the church and shaking it and just kind of shaking, but yeah, it's I mean, to talk about the mask, but
Yeah, I think it's so relevant, and it was at time of Jesus where these religious leaders, and again we call them religious leaders because they were the voice, that the face that everyone saw, and it's the same thing happening today. The people that are being seen, I think Randy mentioned Sunday about, one pastor said that if people would give more, then Jesus would come sooner, kind of things, where the hypocrisy is seen and recognized by people outside, and that's one of the reasons they don't ever want to come inside, is because they see this hypocrisy. And instead of recognizing it, or at least trying to understand what they're seeing, there's this tendency to just hold our ground and put that mask up. And again, not everybody, but that has been true for the most part, right? I think the majority of what is seen as Christianity that's prevalent out there on the airwaves or in the people's faces is seen in this hypocrisy sense, right? And the interesting thing that I kind of close with, because this is, to me, it was really intriguing how Jesus talks about this idea of the people who are poor, right? Giving to the poor, that it's something that does something to the people who give. It puts us in a place almost of empathy when we do it with the right motive, right? So when I give to someone who is in need, and I am doing it prayerfully, and I'm doing it in humility or weakness, in the fasting and the lack of strength, then God is actually revealed in that whole scenario, right? That I am benefiting by my giving. Like Jesus said, it's more blessed to give than receive. That by giving, I actually need the poor to help make me more human, more true, right? I need them so that I can show generosity, because by showing generosity, it makes me healthy, right? And when I do it from a place of fasting, and I do it from a place of prayer, as opposed to being a place where I'm seen, it actually is what I need. If I have the means, then that's what's going to be healthy for me. If I have the means and I do it to be seen, well, then I'm just getting the receipt. That's all you get, buddy. But if I do it with the right motive, it actually does something beneficial to my soul, right? And I know that you have been generous in the past, especially with the kids, and how you've served, where you've been generous, and you've been generous with your time. You go to people's games. You've gone to kids who were in your youth ministry for years, and you still are in touch with them. You went to didn't you go to a memorial service recently?
Yeah.
Someone called and asked for you to be there after how many years was it? I mean,
Yeah, I've been 10, 11 years, and one of the kids who I used to have in children's ministry and junior high ministry, he passed away of a drug overdose, and his mom reached out to me,
yeah.
and in fact, I'm still been in contact with her. I mean, last week I dropped a book off for her, and we're planning to have dinner together with her and her family, and it still blows me away that some of the families that, they still reach out. I mean, it's sad that I've been to 2 memorial services since, I left.
Yeah.
For one was a suicide, one was a drug overdose, but it blows me away that the family's still like, we want you there, and it's like, wow, like, and even at the memorial service, they mentioned the children's ministry.
Yeah.
I think that the pastor who there was a pastor I never didn't know who he was, and talked about, he talked about the children's ministry at the church he went to, and I'm sitting there like, and the mom, like, when I went and dropped a book off for her last week, and she said, we actually really wanted you to share, and I was happy. I wouldn't know what to say, because it's tough, because I hadn't seen him in 10, 11 years.
Yeah.
And when I saw pictures, I knew him as a kid, and it was weird because they have the pictures up there, and like, I didn't recognize him as an adult. I'm like, that's not CJ. I'm like, that's a man, and it is heartwarming. It does bless me when I still get families who kind of reach out to me, or even kids. They'll see me and be like, And sometimes I feel like I did nothing, but
Yeah. See, that's what see as that secret place, right? That's where your reward is in heaven. The secret things that God rewards and sees. Those are the things, because it was you caring for and investing in the lives of those kids that is still carried on, right? Is still remembered. Where if you did something just to be seen, to get recognized, it would have happened, it would have been done. But here you were doing something that no one knew. I didn't know what you were doing. Probably no one else really knew what you were doing. You were just doing it because you cared for the kids.
mm-hmm.
And years later, it's showing
Yeah.
up in your life.
I'm happy I was able to have that part of my life before I had my own kids, because I remember there'd be family. Of course, at the time I wanted to get married, have my own kids, and I used to have moms. One particular mom, she'd always say, "I just want you to know, I always pray that you don't get married, because then you're not going to be able to invest into our kids." And honestly, if I would have, if I would be doing what I did back then, now I would not be going to those baseball games, those dance recitals, those soccer games. I would not be, have going to their houses for dinner.
Mm-hmm.
Because if I had free time, I'm with my girls.
Yeah.
I mean, sorry, your kids are don't. I mean, not that I don't care, but it's like I care, but I don't care as much as. And then it was just like I was able. That was my life.
Yeah.
That was like, if honestly my days off were doing that.
Yeah.
If I had a day off, it was like, okay, let's go to their ball game. Let's go to a ball game together. Let's go to Disneyland together. Those are my days off.
Yeah.
My days off were investing into those kids. And if I was doing that as a father of my Gloria and Amalia now, I wouldn't do that unless their kids were in the same dance group and karate group as my girls. Then I wouldn't go, because
you only have so much time.
Yeah.
You have that time, and yeah, if you had a wealth of time and a wealth of money, then maybe you could, but you're limited, so your focus now is invested in your family, and understandable. I mean, that's why a lot of youth ministers, people are single, because they're able to do things like that, where families are more limited, and understandably so. That's kind of why Paul said it's good not to be married, if you're going to be doing all these things, because otherwise you got to take care of your family, and that's a healthy thing to have to do that. But I just think that is evidence of that secret place where God was doing something through your generosity, where you were giving, and it wasn't, just in finances. I mean, it was giving of your time, and I'm sure some money too, but that giving had enduring effect because it was done in the secret place, so to speak. You weren't doing it to be seen, recognized. You weren't doing it to make a name for yourself. You were doing it just because you cared for the kids, right? And it shows up. And I think that translates in all these areas of our lives. It happens even with your family. You don't do for your girls because you're going to be seen. You do it because you love them. And that's going to have an effect in their lives for years to come as their dad, even through the teenage years when,
I'm not looking
don't
forward
worry.
to that.
Hey, it might be no problem for you guys. But the whole idea is they'll remember that you cared. They'll remember you loved. They'll remember those things because those things are part of, I think, that heavenly realm, that's there. Any other thoughts or final thoughts or things that, came to mind maybe just during this whole thing?
It was a good talk. I mean, I enjoyed it. Thank you for having me on again. I enjoy doing this. It's nice now with like my new job. I don't work till 10:30, 11 o'clock at night. I do have to wake up at like 3 o'clock in the morning or 3. Tomorrow I don't have to wake up till 3:45, which is late, but it's nice to be able to have my evenings again and be able to do this. I mean, I'm going to be rushing home as soon as this is over. I'm going to be going to bed.
Going to bed.
But yeah, I enjoy the talks. I mean,
that's cool.
Yeah.
It's good to have you here. I do want to share one thing. I got an announcement that while we were doing this, actually I got 2, just got another one. Some of you know, Josh Whaley, Danny and Melissa's youngest son, had a blood clot. They believe, he had blood clots in his arms. They think it's from his wrestling and the things that he's done. They've had to do a number of surgeries. She said that he's out and feeling better. The clot is mostly gone in his arm, and they put a stent in his arm, still on blood thinners to get rid of the clots in his lungs. He said he feels the best he's felt in weeks. And then Melissa just said, he has one more procedure tomorrow to take the sleeve out and then the CT scan. So we want to be praying for Josh Whaley as he's in the hospital and dealing with blood clots. Gosh, he's just a young man. He's just in college, so I'm thinking he's probably like 19 or something like that. But anyway, please keep Josh Whaley up in your prayers that the procedures are successful, that the blood clots are removed without any harm to his body, because that's a scary thing. But he's been in the hospital for a few days now, and today was a big deal and a big day. So we're glad that he's doing better, but continue praying for him. And again, thank you, Jason, for being here. And while we close, let's close in prayer. I want to lift up Josh as we kind of close out. God, thank you for Jason. Thank you for the wealth of things that you have done in his heart, in the secret and hidden areas that are the heavenly realm, Lord. And I pray you continue to do that work in his life and through him, Lord. And Father, I lift up the Whaleys to you. I pray that you would strengthen that family, and I pray that you would remove all those blood clots in Josh from his arms to his lungs, and you would do it in a way that is healthy for him overall and has no more complications. Thank you for getting him through this surgery, and I pray you continue to do so. And Lord, I know of other friends, dear friends of ours, who are in the hospital right now, and I know they don't want to be mentioned, but Lord, may your hand be upon them. Give their bodies strength, give their minds and their hearts peace, and bring healing to them. And those who are in their orbit, Lord, those who are around them, may you use them to encourage and strengthen, and again, give our doctors wisdom as they treat our beloved friends. And we lift these things to you, and we trust you for them. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Thanks again, Jason. Appreciate you, man.
No problem. Thank you.
All right.
All right.